So I will, I guess we'll do that. Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the December 19th, 2023 meeting of the Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission. This meeting will be broadcast live on CTN Cable Channel 16 and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. To speak at public comment, any callers can call toll-free 877-853-5247 or another of the published numbers. And be sure to enter meeting ID 940-7190-7291. And having said all that, I think we're ready to call the roll.
Sounds good. 1 second and invite somebody else back in, and then
Sure.
we'll call it. So. Commissioner Bush.
Present.
Commissioner Cavateo.
Present, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Kraut. Commissioner London.
Here in Ypsilanti today.
Commissioner Marson.
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Montague.
Here in Ypsilanti.
Commissioner Perlowski.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Skyless.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Smith.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Radina. Councilmember Watson. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And I hear that at some point we may be joined by City Administrator Dahoney. Oh, and I think there he is right now. Welcome, City Administrator Dahoney. It's nice to have you.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be able to join you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We've just called the roll, and at this point, I think we're ready to approve our agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we're ready for the first public comment period. Each caller will have 3 minutes to speak. Typically, PAC does not respond, but we do very much appreciate people calling in and doing this public service. Do we have any callers on the line?
We do not have any callers for the first public commentary.
All right, thank you very much. That being said, we are ready to approve our minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes or a motion to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2023 meeting?
I move to approve.
Horace. I think I saw Anne's hand. So Anne moved to approve. Do we have a second?
Happy to second.
Rachel, second. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. With that, we're ready to move on to our presentation. Today, we've got Adam here to speak to us about the Ann Arbor Parks ADA transition plan. Adam, I know we're working you pretty hard today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, you're going to be seeing me for a couple of things here. We started this ADA transition plan, I think it was about 18 months ago. And it kind of went from looking at a few of our parks to expanding to look at all of our parks. We've hired Altura Solutions, they're a consultant that specializes in our ADA transition plans. And I'm going to hand it off to them in a minute here to present. I think they're getting loaded right now. But I did want to say this has been a really great project in helping us kind of with this vision of moving forward with the parks being completely accessible and meeting our ADA goals. Some of the things that have come out of this already is that the city now has an accessibility coordinator in Tracy Bird. So we're really excited. She joined the city, I think it was in October. So that kind of came out of this. So that's a great thing. Sarah Stewart, who's been in parks, she's going to be helping as part of our parks coordinator to help our transition plan move around in conjunction with myself. There's a lot of different components. Our our draft report that we first received on this was 2,500 pages long. So just to give you an idea of the scope of this project, that's what we've been dealing with. I think in your packet was a link to, it's like the first 40 pages of this plan, which kind of outlines what we're going through. And I think, Josh, we can make it available, or if you want to see our barriers and the facilities and the parks and what we have going, it's just such a large file that we weren't able to share that. So that is something that we can do if you're interested. What our plan is for this is we want to kind of introduce this final plan of our transition plan and give you a month or two to review it because it is quite large. And then we'll be coming back to you and hopefully answering any questions you might have before we adopt this transition plan. So, Josh, do you have anything to add before we get into the presentation?
Just to thank everyone that did the work on this. We did not want to send you a link with 2,500 pages on Friday and then have a resolution on Tuesday to say, do you approve this? So that's where we're taking this step in between. There's a lot of minutia in there, but I think it is very important for the work we're doing and what we want to do moving forward. So thank you to Adam for taking the lead on this and everyone from Altura to that have helped us limp along and learn our way through this. So we appreciate it.
Josh. All right, so with this, I will hand it over to Jesus and Eileen from Altura, and they have a short presentation about this project.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jesus Lardizabal, and I'm with Altura Solutions, and we were the consultants that helped to put together the ADA transition plan for the city. I do want to mention and thank city staff for all their input and their help. It was definitely a team effort, and it took all of us to put all of this work together. I have a very brief presentation that, if it's okay, Adam, I'll share my screen.
Yep.
And so can folks see my screen and the presentation? Great. So, we just want to cover the basics of a transition plan and the type of work that we did. So, and ADA transition plan is basically mandated by the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's a federal civil rights law. And Title II, there are 5 titles in the ADA, but Title II is specific to what we're talking about. And Title II basically says that government agencies must perform certain things, and this is one of them. And it's to create a transition plan, and it consists of doing a self-evaluation of the government agencies, that in this case, the parks departments, facilities, as well as programs, services, and activities. Then you overlay the findings of both, and you come up with a plan to basically identify all the barriers and to put the parks get the parks department to transition from its current status to an ADA compliant status. Part of that was to gather public input, which we did. And then we also, in the transition plan, outlined methods to remove these identified barriers, both in facilities and in your programs, and then develop a schedule to achieve compliance, as well as designate a person responsible for the plan's implementation. So the process, starting with facilities, we went out and inspected or assessed over 160 facilities, and included parks, trails, and other types of facilities. And then we collected data and we identified barriers. So we would walk out and walk through a facility and determine if a drinking fountain was compliant, if the restroom was compliant, and so forth. And we used a geolocation process where the information being handed over is in GIS and can be mapped. And then there are photos and other data associated with each barrier. So once you look through the transition plan, it'll further outline how we captured this information. and the findings, thus the 2,500 pages. So a lot of it, the majority of those 2,500 pages are what came out of our facility assessments. So here we did just a quick video to demonstrate how we captured the information. So this is an example of another project, but if we use these handheld devices where we find a barrier, we take an image, and then once we take this image, we can go through and select what the barrier is. So in this case, we would select door, and it's basically a series of pull downs. And then it would say, we would then go to hardware, since it is a doorknob that we're identifying that is not compliant. And we would then say this doorknob is not compliant. We would type in an as-built condition to identify what the issue is. In this case, it's a single knob, but we might walk through the facility and find 10 doorknobs. So we would capture it once and saying there are 10 doorknobs that do not meet the ADA requirement. There are various fields that we can fill in. And once we're done capturing the information, this goes to one of the barriers, and then the software just keeps track of the barriers. And that's what you'll see in the transition plan report. When you go look at the facility reports, it is basically each identified barrier went through this process of identifying the location, taking a photograph, and then saying what the issue was. Now, on the program services and activity side, or PSAs, we interviewed staff regarding what the department offers to the community in terms of program services and activities. And this could be anything that the department offers, ranging from being able to reserve a, let's say like a space at a park, offering classes, whether a self-defense class or running sports leagues. Those are all program services and activities. We interviewed representatives from 13 parks divisions, and we basically asked them, show us a representative sampling of what you provide to the community. Then once those were submitted to us, we developed a checklist specific for Ann Arbor, where we went through and said every PSA will be run through this checklist to identify if there are any barriers or potential barriers for people with disabilities. And so that will also be included in the report, and you'll see the specific PSAs that we reviewed and our findings from those reviews. We also conducted public input. As we mentioned earlier, we had both virtual and then a combination of virtual and in-person meetings that we conducted. And we developed a website where people were allowed to go to the website and make comments. Staff also developed a pin map where you could go and make a comment about a specific location and say, I wish this park had these amenities from an ADA perspective, or any type of comment. And we then took all of that input and it was placed into the transition plan. The reason the public input is important is we were able to hear stories of what people use and how they use it, as well as what their priorities are in terms of the department's infrastructure. So the transition plan, now the Parks Department has an ADA transition plan, and which will hopefully be adopted here in a little bit. But this transition plan meets ADA Title II requirements, which is, as I mentioned earlier, a federal requirement of government agencies. We hope that this enhances existing programs and services as we vetted these programs and made some recommendations for changes so that they are accessible. It creates accessibility and inclusion. It also complements the department's the pros plan that the city has been working on, the department has been working on in parallel with us. And it'll be a benefit to the community in general, we believe. So as part of the plan, we also conducted training. Now, training was open to anybody at the city, although it was mostly attended by park staff. And we covered topics such as the requirements of ADA Title II, accessibility awareness, the outdoor developed area standards, and so much of what we talk about is in parks, effective communication, the technical standards, and ultimately how to implement the transition plan. So the recommendations that came out of the transition plan, as you go through the document, there's an executive summary of what we're recommending. And it was basically appoint what's known as an ADA coordinator, which, as Adam mentioned, has already happened. And this is basically the person responsible for implementation of the transition plan. And so this position is key, not only in having a single point of contact for implementation, but this person is then tasked with making sure that all the recommendations within the transition plan are carried out. So where we identified barriers, where we've prioritized where to begin, then this person will be responsible for making sure that this plan is adhered to and produces reports that show that the city and the department are on track. Establish an ADA grievance procedure that can be followed by the department and can even be adopted by the city in general. And we're recommending to achieve compliance over approximately 30 years and for the city to commit approximately 19 million for the projects highlighted in the plan itself. The ADA coordinator, as Adam mentioned, the term we're used to is ADA coordinator. City of Ann Arbor is using the title accessibility coordinator, but the primary roles are to provide notices of compliance, which is a federal requirement, basically stipulating that the department complies with the ADA, implement the ADA transition plan, and I mentioned production of an annual report. So the department on an annual basis, as it produces an annual report, basically highlights the accomplishments of that year. So the department will say, we addressed X amount of barriers, we amended X amount of programs and services, we had so many inquiries or grievances, and this is how we handled them. And at that point, the city can say, we're on track and we've spent X amount of money, or we're ahead or we're behind. And this is the city's opportunity to sort of to show the public in general, but specifically Department of Justice, any issues that have come up, or basically say we need more time, or we're ahead of schedule in what we've committed ourselves to. The accessibility coordinator also administers a grievance procedure, and in general is responsible for compliance, for the department, as we're talking about here specifically, but also citywide. So the next steps for the transition plan, we are going through the commission and city council approval process, and we estimate approval in early 2024 if everything goes well. So thank you in advance for your time and for hearing us and for your contributions to the transition plan. So with that, we can open up to any questions.
Thank you very much. It's a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this this project so far, as evidenced by both the length of the report and the length of the city's commitment going forward. Alexa, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, I was like, oh, I'm still muted here. Thanks everyone on the team for doing this. I can imagine what a huge lift this has been, and it's really exciting to have something that's so comprehensive for the park system. I'd be really curious, meeting the ADA requirements of the Civil Rights Office is a huge accomplishment. The report uses some language around inclusivity and kind of inclusion, which I would think is sometimes a higher bar than what ADA can be, where you could have kind of segregated areas or similar facilities elsewhere. Would just be curious, I don't know if it's the Altura team or from the park staff, to get a sense of how you guys think about, meeting ADA requirements as maybe a baseline, and whether, knowing that there's more cost and effort in it, whether universal design or inclusive access are components of how you're thinking to build on any of this work.
I can start. The way that I'm viewing this report, and we've already used it in some cases, is this is that baseline that we need to hit. And when we're looking to do projects someplace, what we envision this is what needs to be done, but our bar is always going to be higher. I'm going to be talking about the bicentennial part coming up, and I think it'll be a good example there that we'll be hitting. We've used this report to identify all of our barriers, so we have that, and then we're kind of going that next step up. So that's like, from a parks perspective, is that baseline. I don't know if you want to talk about how it comes into the ADA requirements, Chewy, but that's kind of how we're thinking about it and how we're using it.
Yes, the ADA is the baseline. It's the minimum that's required by the federal government. And working with city staff, we know that is the baseline, and staff does want to go above and beyond. Now, we did use terminology such as inclusivity. And while we specifically don't cover elements such as universal design, because that was basically outside of the scope, but staff is well versed in terms of the absolute minimums and how the city can go above and beyond. And so we highly encourage inclusivity, but the scope was strictly Americans with Disabilities Act, but this is a great foundation for building solutions on top of it that go above and beyond.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and add to that. I mean, I think there with 2,500 pages of barriers, we're going to have to do some ADA things in any given year. And as we develop, where we have major improvements, the focus will be on that inclusivity, accessibility as much as we possibly can, both funding wise, resource wise, all of those type of things. But it's a combination of both, and we'll always strive for more when we can.
Yeah, thanks for that. That makes a lot of sense. I know too, things like autism and certain other disabilities aren't really included in ADA. So just with such a forward-looking plan, would love to just think about how that can kind of go on top of what's here as what we're looking to do.
Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's really interesting, in addition to being informative. I was wondering if we could learn a little bit more about what the grievance process might look like, and specifically whether or not there are opportunities to make that process accessible.
So the process itself should be accessible. So for example, if you go to the city's website or make a phone call and file a grievance. Now, we're talking specifically parks, because the city in its entirety doesn't have a transition plan, so it would be park specific. Then the city has an established grievance procedure, and whether you do it online or in person through a phone call, it should go to the accessibility coordinator. Then there's a procedure specific to, you do the intake, and the city then has X amount of time to respond back to the person filing the grievance. The city conducts an investigation, makes a determination internally, and then notifies the person filing the grievance of the city's decision. Now, there is a process for an appeal, but to start the process for the appeal, you have to have new information. So you're not appealing it to a higher source just because you didn't like the answer. It's more of, well, I don't think you considered everything. Here's some other information that I think you should consider as part of that process. Then the city goes then through a similar step of, we have X amount of time to consider this new information, and then we will respond accordingly. And that is all run by the accessibility coordinator. the accessibility coordinator, let's say somebody complains about a drinking fountain not being accessible at a specific park, then the accessibility coordinator will reach out to parks, to the proper facilities person, who will then go out and look at it, or can look at the report and say, yes, we agree, that drinking fountain we know is not compliant. We've got it programmed to be taken care of in year 5. And if that suffices, we're going to wait till year 5. But if it needs to be pushed up, then we can move it up, or there can be various scenarios that play out. But the accessibility coordinator, with the transition plan and with support from staff, can then determine the appropriate actions to be taken in response to the grievance.
And I will just jump in there. The city does have a process right now, a grievance process, is currently through the clerk's office, and we've had a handful in my time with the city of grievances. So we do have that process in place. Obviously, having the accessibility coordinator will help improve that. I think getting this plan into place will also formalize it and allow us to share that information more. Because at different points throughout the city's history, since ADA became law, there have been various plans created. Our hope is that our goal is that this one will be long-standing and active versus not as active as some other ones have been. So there has been work done in the past, and the grievance process is in there. So.
Thank you for that context. I just want to make a note here that I know there's a lot to consider in this plan, but that the grievance process starts out on the right foot on the front end of being very easy to find on a city webpage associated with parks, easy to fill out, easy to understand what the process will be for anybody on the community side starting it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Other questions for Adam or the team? All right, well, thank you all so much for the report, and thanks for the time and attention to giving us a little bit of extra time to review this, and I know we'll talk again about it in the coming days. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to our reports and our manager's report. Josh, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to start out by giving Mr. Dohoney the opportunity to share any comments, thoughts that he would like to at this point before I add a few minor things. So.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Lauren. I'm glad to be able to drop by your meeting this afternoon. I haven't done that previously. Let me first thank you for what you're doing on behalf of our parks. The roles that you're playing is extremely valuable. I was glad to coincidentally be coming on a day when the plan that you were discussing was sort of being presented. It allowed me to take a look at it. When you heard the reference to the accessibility coordinator that we brought on board, it's something that was talked about when I first arrived back in 2021. There was a desire to create a position and bring it into local government to do some of the things that you heard discussed. So it's good that we have been able to do that. I have met Tracy, and I think we've got a real good find there. So I'm looking forward to some stability and longevity out of that. I know you're going to be talking about Bicentennial Park on the agenda. It's one of the elements of the 12-month-long celebration that we're trying to spotlight. That'll begin in January. We're going to kick things off in about a month officially, and encourage the community to find ways to celebrate itself, really. We want to encourage people to think about activities or events where they could celebrate the bicentennial. We are doing some things to bring more attention to the fact that we're In the bicentennial year, we are encouraging businesses and nonprofits to think about including it in the things that they're doing. And then I guess the last thing I'll mention, one of the things that has been very obvious to me in being here, and I've been here now just a couple of years, people in Ann Arbor completely value parks. They see it as a community treasure, as a community asset. We have a lot of them, as you know, for a community our size, which then also creates a capital obligation that we have to figure out how to manage. But it is one of the things that keeps the quality of life high within the community. And so the staff and working in concert with you, working with other supporters, helps us to preserve and protect and enhance what is really a jewel of the city. And I'm just happy to be here and be part of it. I'd like to drop by periodically just to see. I'll never really be coming with an agenda. So if you want to chat about something specific, you can let Josh know ahead of time and I can be prepared. But before I get out of your way, I'll give you an opportunity if there's any questions you have for me. Otherwise, I wish you a very happy holiday season and try to stay warm.
Thank you so much for being here. It's great to meet you virtually and to have you at our meeting.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll step off and good luck to all of you and good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honey. I will add three quick things. We are coming up on the holidays. School's out. There will be additional public skates over the holiday break at both Bureau and Veterans. Please check our website for the details on that, and I'll send that out. Mr. Mahoney spoke about bicentennial. Just this week, there's been some communication going out about the bicentennial kickoff event, which is January 19th at the Michigan Theater. Proceeds to that are going to support the legacy projects, which includes Bicentennial Park as well as the Elk Lodge. So I'll be sending out a communication tomorrow that has more of these details, but please spread the word. And if you can make it, you'll get to see Adam and I talking about the park there. This time of year, there's always a number of donation drives. Parks is happy to support the Community Action Network's drive for non-perishable food items and essential supplies. Many of our facilities are collecting those. So if you are looking to give somewhere, please check out one of our facilities. If you need more information, you can reach out to Brittany Patton, who is the Senior Center Director who works closely with CAN. And then lastly, I would just like to thank all of the park staff for all of their work this year. Every year, their passion, dedication, and service allow the parks to be the jewel that Mr. DeHoney spoke about. We're extremely fortunate to have such a dedicated staff, and I don't say it enough. I don't see them enough because I'm stuck places that I'd rather not be, as opposed to out in our facilities. But I just want to say thank you one last time before the end of the year. And I look forward to a great 2024. And that's all I got.
Hear, hear. All right. Thanks, Josh. Let's do our committee reports at this point. Do we have anything from RAC? Hannah.
I do. So RAC finally met last Tuesday. So I'll just give you guys kind of brief overview on what we talked about at our meeting. So we had a presentation on Rec and Ed's adult team sports. We've seen continued growth in kind of the four main adult team sports, which includes softball, kickball, soccer, and volleyball. And we've also seen a huge increase in the number of free agent individuals wanting to play, which is awesome. So kind of trying to figure out how to best use them going forward and kind of keep our programs growing. We also had a presentation on the year-end financials. For those of you who are less familiar with this than we are, Community education and recreation is a little bit unique just because it's a special revenue fund and it's a self-supporting entity under the umbrella of AAPS. So they gave us a budget report. They saw a 20% revenue increase in the 2022-23 fiscal year compared to the prior year, which is great and largely due to increased enrollment and program offerings. We had about the same number of scholarships used this year, which is also fantastic. We offered 912 scholarships, which is quite a large number. And then the challenges for next year are mostly involving staffing, both for our existing programs and in particular childcare, and then continuing to grow and diversify our program offerings and increasing participation back to pre-pandemic levels. So that's kind of what we talked about. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Do we have anything from the Environmental Committee? Anne?
Yes, we met in late November and we had a presentation on PFAS chemicals, chemical pollution, no action items from that, more of an informational presentation. We talked about potentially the Environmental Commission potentially supporting a phase 2 feasibility study for municipalization of our electric utility. And we talked about some policy recommendations to advocate for at the state level. And finally, really, to me, the most relevant thing that came out of the meeting as far as parks goes is that the gas-powered leaf blower ban, I think, which probably I didn't follow up, but I think that was voted on yesterday at the council meeting. But it was pointed out that this does not exempt the city maintenance crews, including the golf courses, and so you might see some changes in equipment at our golf courses this coming year. We'll see. That's about it.
All right, thank you. Any questions on committees or other committees that I forgot? All right, thanks very much. We'll go on to new business now. We have 3 resolutions to consider today. This is where we call on Adam again to take us through, I think, the first 2. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Excellent. So it looks like the first one is a resolution to recommend approval of professional service agreements with for engineering services for parks. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't have a presentation for this one, but a little bit of background. So we typically carry we usually have firms that we use as needed basis. So when a project comes up, we don't have to go out to an RFP. The whole process, we usually need to act quicker. And so what we do in the past is we get a 3-year standing contract with a firm. We have a set limit, which in the past has been $150,000 annually that we can use. And what we do is we can route work statements, which we've come to you guys with, but we don't have to go through that full process to get going. Our previous contracts for engineering, architecture, and our playground design all were due or came to an end at the end of this year. And so we went through that process again. We made a couple tweaks. So instead of 3 years, we went to a 5-year contract. And that's to save time because this takes a lot of time and effort to go through. I think this time around for engineering, which I'm here for, we had 12 different firms. There's large proposals we're going through interviews. So we're extending it to 5 years with a 2-year, the ability to extend it for an additional 2 years at the end of that 5-year period. The other change that we made was from $150,000, we're asking to go up to $300,000. This is in response to several of the projects that we have now are being more complex and large in scale. And we were coming up against that $150,000 threshold. way more than we have historically. Things are just costing more, and so we felt that this was a good amount. We don't always go up to that 300,000, but we want it there just in case, so we don't have to come back through with amendments, things like that, as bigger projects come online. So those were the two changes that we made to our RFP that we put out. We received, as I mentioned, 12 different firms, and we ended up selecting 4 of them. So the 4 that we're recommending to award contracts were Smith Group, OHM Advisors, Rowe Professional Services Company, and Beckett Rader. What we tried to do is think through what services these firms offered and tried to think about what we would be using them for. And so we wanted kind of a large, a diverse amount of offerings so that we could go to who we needed to select a certain firm. We looked some of the larger firms like Smith Group, OHM. They're really great for complex, large projects. Smith Group's really good for the community engagement. We're using them for West Park. So they kind of have that kind of outside the box high design level. We have Rowe Professional Services, who helps us a lot with our smaller projects. They also help us with Bicentennial. They're very good on a technical scale. We have Beckett Rader. They have design expertise in the area. They're local, which is really nice. And so we can have them come out when we have an immediate problem that comes up. So those are why we kind of chose those 4 firms to recommending awarding those contracts to. For each of them, I think we interviewed 6 different firms. Actually, was not part of the interview process due to a conflict of interest with one of the firms. So Josh could speak to that if you have any questions, but we went through this process and those were the 4 that we felt comfortable offering and we felt like would provide the parks the best benefit over the next 5 years as we go through and look at some of these projects that we have coming up. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Thanks. I had a quick one, which is that when we execute contracts with these folks for the 5-year period, do we have line items for the amount of money or minimums that we are committing to pay to each firm? Or is it just, it's any amount as needed up to the city's designated maximum?
Yep. We don't have a minimum. I mean, in past, I've used firms for small projects such as $5,000 all the way up to, we have the one for West Park with Smith Group was over, I think it was like 100,000. So it kind of is all over the board. It's really like a pre-qualification. So we've kind of vetted these firms and so we can use them for anything that kind of comes up. So we don't have the minimum, we have that maximum annual amount that we can spend.
Okay, but we've not promised them any particular financial return.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, I see Anne has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understand how it works. Like, so you have a project that comes up like the West Park public engagement, and then do you establish the budget and then go to these 4 firms, or do you select one of these 4 firms and then ask them to like come up with a proposal for it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so what we do is we have experience a lot with these firms, and so we kind of know what their specialties are. But what we'll go is we'll explain the problem and we'll ask them for a proposal. And so they can send us a proposal and we can talk through scope. A lot of times they'll want to come out and see kind of what's going on and offer up a suggestion, and then we can go from there. But we're asking them to provide us a proposal to fix or accomplish the task that we need. And then we can review it and discuss it. And then we create what's called a work statement. And so work statement falls underneath this PSA. And so we would go out and get a contractor work statement specifically for that project based on their proposal. And it's not a guarantee that we will use all of these firms at times. I mean, there's times where we've gone a couple years without using one. So that's not a guarantee, but that's how it works is we typically get proposals. Sometimes we'll ask 3 of them to provide a proposal and see who has the best kind of outcome that we're looking for would meet our needs.
Yeah. And one of the things that Adam said, and this is really a great efficiency for staff. We are still doing the work, but the difference between doing the work now to get these on-call standing contracts versus going to an RFP for every individual project is a huge time saving, cost savings. Staff time is a key component to this. And that's part of the reason as well when we looked at the 3 years versus the 5 years. So Hillary Ansel, myself, and Mike Hahn did the interviews, the 6 interviews. Not that we can't do other things, but this is a key component of taking time away. We work with a lot of the same groups. So trying to find ways to be more efficient so we can get Adam, Hillary, who have a lot on their plate already, to focus on the projects to get things completed. And so we look forward to having the 5-year and potential for a 2-year administrative renewal.
Yep. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, it actually raised another question for me, which is, so you're asking to raise the limit to 300,000. At what point, like at what do you have like a dollar amount at which you come to PAC to ask for our approval of a particular contract?
Yeah, I believe it's 25,000. And so if it goes, Josh, is that correct?
Well, anything that needs to go to council for approval, which is now 75,000, will come to PAC. So we still have this conversation, and again, if it's something that's at 50,000 that has a unique nature to it, when we talk about the project, we may be coming to PAC as well. We have to come to PAC at 75,000 and above because council has to approve that purchase, that usage. So
Thanks.
Other questions or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, thanks. Alexa moves to approve. Ruth, is that a second? All right, motion by Alexa, second by Ruth. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the second resolution, which we've been discussing bicentennial. Now's our chance to discuss it. We have a resolution to recommend approval of to purchase the bicentennial splash pad materials. And we are back to Adam for this one.
Yeah. Let me share my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. Yeah, so what I'm here to talk today about is there's a resolution to approve or recommend approval of purchasing equipment for the splash pad and the playground equipment at Bicentennial Park. So what I want to do is just kind of give you a run through of the project, because I don't know that I've actually been here to do a quick run through. So I can kind of talk about this and answer any questions that you might have. So, full screen. Yeah, so in September 18th, City Council renamed what was Southeast Area Park as Bicentennial Park. And as part of that renaming, there was a commitment to improve and add amenities to this park. And what had been discussed was a splash pad. It was something that we don't have in the city and would be a great resource and a great amenity to just add to the park system. Your slide. So just a quick overview of what's been planned so far at Bicentennial Park. So right now, for those that aren't familiar with Southeast area, we're using a lot of the same geometries that are already out there. So where it's right here in magenta, that's where the splash pad will go. There right now, it's just an asphalt pad that was designed as a roller hockey pad, but I don't know that that's been used out there. It's certainly not in great shape. So we are using that asphalt pad as the base of where the splash pad is going to go. In green here, we have an existing play structure that is at the end of its life and needed replacement. So we'll be replacing that as part of this project, along with swings over here. They too need to be replaced. Where the red here, we have an existing pavilion that will be getting some renovations and some improvements. Right here, there's a concession stand. Parks no longer does concession stands. There's also 2 bathrooms, what we're going to do is convert this entire facility into a restroom facility, so that it can contain the capacity needed for the splash pad, which will be quite busy. Everything in blue here, the existing path network, that will be repaved. It's in pretty poor condition right now. And it's an accessibility issue as well. It was identified in our report as one of those minimums that we wanted to improve. And so we'll be replacing all of these as part of this project. In yellow, there's this parking lot on the south is currently in use. The parking lot on the north, there is no paving right now. It is just a gravel lot that's not really used. Right now, the only entrance is off of Ellsworth that's right here. And Platt Road has an entrance that was closed off because people were cutting through. And so we will be opening that up and repaving everything in the yellow here, which will help with our accessibility and make this a nicer park to come to. Zooming in a little bit on what I'm calling phase one, it's kind of this active zone. So we get a better look at where the splash pad would be, where the playground is, the swings, the pavilion, the restroom. This is going to have a lot of high use area. And so this is where what I'm talking about today, these are a lot of that things of phase one that we're hoping to have open next year in August for the bicentennial. So I'll talk through the splash pad right now and then kind of walk through some of these other elements. So this is a plan view of the splash pad, and I have some more renderings I'll show after this. But what I wanted to talk about is this was designed for different levels of play. So what we have on one end, we have a tot zone, and what that has is some small bubblers. They go about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. I took my toddler to many splash pads all summer to kind of do investigation, and this was like his zone. This is where he wanted to be down at the ground level. He wanted to play at it. This is a table where water kind of trickles down and you can kind of play and move things around and see how the water adjusts, and it allows you to kind of get your hands in the water without being sprayed. It's more of a passive kind of come and explore it as you want. These are, and it's a component as well for older kids that don't like the stimulation of the big heavy water. This is kind of that zone where they're going to want to be at. Next zone we have is what's called the family zone. It's taking that next step up before what we call big water. There's some sprayers in here. We have some rocks, and there's 4 different rocks in here, but the water will kind of come out of the rock for kind of a natural feel. These elements are like they're like semicircles that you can kind of walk through and get misted, but you're not getting hit with that hard water. We've got right here, it's a water shroud, and it's smooth water. So water kind of comes up through a pipe and then kind of flows down like an umbrella. I was recently at a talk, and this is a really good component for children that have sensory issues, because the calming water they can stick their hand into and it actually calms them. So where a lot of these elements are sprays or misters or things like this, this is a component that's more relaxing, tranquil, allows them to kind of just experience the water at their own level and touch. The dynamic zone, or as we refer to as big water, that's got a big bucket that will dump down. It has a water swirl that will spread around, so kids can go and move it and experience how the water moves. We've also got a series of bubblers, and that shoots water 8 feet in the air. It's more exciting. So you can kind of see, this is a better kind of image to kind of show what some of those features look like. Here we've got our kind of water. So the water hits this is like a slide kind of, where the water hits that and then flows out, so you're not just getting the bucket dropped on you. We've got the rocks, we've got the twirl, the water twirl, and then you can see the bubblers that are over here. What you didn't see on that plan are we're having shade sails. So to provide shade in there, we have concrete for the surface, but we also have, so there's actually going to be a fence around here. This is just a rendering of the splash pad equipment, but we'll have what's called forever lawn. It's like a synthetic lawn inside of this zone. So it'll be cooler on the feet. Kids will like to kind of sit in this zone if they want to get away from water, but we'll have these shade sails set so that a lot of this will be in shaded area. We will also be providing, it's not shown in here, but this is all fenced in. So that if they get stimulated or they need to run, there's a lot of running that happens at splash pads, not as in like a fun way, but to get away. And so this is putting a fence in there is really a safety concern. It's only 4 foot, but it's to kind of prevent runaway activity from happening. Just some more views of kind of what's going on in here. You kind of just got, this is that like water shroud. So kids like to sit underneath of it and it feels like there's an enclosure to them. You see that tot zone with the bubblers and the table on this side. And another thing to mention, and it kind of goes back to our baseline ADA regulations versus inclusivity. This is going to be universally accessible. So this is designed for everyone to come use, regardless of ability. So that was something we thought through when we picked out all of this equipment. Just trying to provide a diverse array of kind of experiences that you can have at this splash pad. And this is my first time designing a splash pad. It's been really kind of exciting to go through and kind of see all of this equipment. And a lot of these other parks that I visited in Detroit and Ferndale, it was just so much joy. Like they are so heavily used. And so I'm really excited to see something like this come online. Talking about the playground now. So this is our existing structure. Like I said, it was at its end of its life and was due for replacement here in the next year or two. And it's not safe with a splash pad. So this has a lot of plastic and metal, which gets really slippery for kids when they're wet and kind of running between the splash pad and the playground. So the new system is more rope and tension based. So what this is it allows kids to kind of be able to use this without the risk of kind of falling or slipping or sliding as much. So it's designed to go hand in hand with our splash pad. Well, you can see we originally had engineered wood fiber underneath of the play structure. That's our safety surfacing. What we're going to be switching to is what's the forever lawn, and it's like a synthetic lawn that you don't have those wood chips being transferred from the play center to the splash pad where they would kind of get caught up inside of our filtration systems, things like that. So this is more of a maintenance issue. It provides that same, if not more, safety because the engineered wood fiber over time gets compressed, which is fine in a lot of our parks, but this one's going to have a lot of traffic, and so this will hold up better. And I don't have a photo of it, but we will also be the swings that are out there. We're going to be putting in new accessible swings. So we'll be putting in an oodle swing, which is good for kids of all ages. It allows for bigger kids to be using it. We'll be putting in tot swings. So right now it's all belt swings that are out there. And so we'll be providing more experiences and more accessibility with our swings out here. Talking just quickly about the pavilion and the restroom. So this is what both of these currently look like. This is the restroom where half of it right now is a storage unit. Half of it has a concession stand area, and then there's the 2 bathrooms. What we're doing is converting this entire structure to a restroom to meet Eagle's requirements for capacity of the splash pad. So the way we're designing this is it'll be 100 occupants or less for the splash pad. And so our bathrooms needed to hit that amount. And so we're designing this and making those improvements to fit that need. In addition, we've taken our ADA report, we've already put it to use and identified in the existing bathrooms where our barriers are. So we'll be making improvements to make this fully accessible. Inside also will be new electrical panels. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but this entire park is going to be run off of solar. So while we'll still be tied to the grid if we need to, we based our calculations so that over the entire year, the demand for electricity will be provided by solar panels. And so this building will be used for that conversion where the panels are coming in. For the pavilion, it's in pretty good shape. It does need some touching up. So what we'll be doing is doing some minor repairs to the structure. We'll be repainting. There's been an ask for a lot of the birds take shelter up in the top of there. And so working with maybe finding netting or some other way to keep birds out of there. We'll be replacing the existing lights with solar lights. So we'll be mounting small solar panels to the top of this pavilion, which will power that and the outlets in there. And then replacing all of the site furnishings with new accessible picnic tables. So I already talked about solar, but we're working with the Office of Sustainability. They actually received a grant to cover the cost of installing solar panels out here. We'll be putting in car charging port, like they're basically charging ports in the parking lot that will have solar panels on top of them. What we've done is we've run through the demand needed by the splash pad, by the ball fields, by the pavilion, the restrooms, and then we've actually talked about maybe a future addition of a new pavilion or an office building out here as part of maybe like a third phase. But taking in all of those accounts and putting up a solar system where over the course of the year that demand is met and we're capturing what we need to off of the solar panels. Accessibility. So after the completion of phase 1 and 2, nearly the entire park will be accessible at that minimum ADA regulation. The one part that won't be is there's a playground off of Ellsworth. I put Eisenhower here, but it's Ellsworth. There's a small playground that's scheduled to be replaced in the next few years. So once that happens, it'll be fully an ADA compliant park. And then also utility improvements. We're working with Public Works to provide internet infrastructure to the park. So right now there isn't any. It's both needed to run the splash pad, the control panels, but also providing free Wi-Fi to residents in the area, whoever is using that. That's what they'd like to do. So we're working with them to provide that at the park. So I want to talk about the schedule real quick. So this past summer, since we don't have a splash pad in the system, I've never really designed one. Hillary hadn't either. We did a lot of splash pad research, looking at different vendors, different equipment. We ended up choosing Aquatics to go with, based on some of our partners, what their recommendations and seeing how this worked. We're using what's called a recirculating system for our splash pad, which means that we're capturing all of the water and reusing it and treating it similar to a pool. A lot of splash pads are it's like a flow through system. So you're taking your potable water right down to the sewer drain. And so we didn't feel that was up to our values of what we wanted. So we'll be doing this recirculating system, which means it's treated a lot like a pool. And that'll be important here in a minute. So fall of 2023, we gave notice to Rowe Professional Services to proceed with engineering documents, and that's when we selected our splash pad and we began working with Aquatics to come up with the design that we have here. December 2023, so we've been working through those documents and reviews. We reserved our space with Eagle for their permit, and that can take 3 to 4 months. So it was important to get on their list now so that we have a chance at opening later next year. So we're all basing this on, hopefully we're opening August, September 2024. And so part of that is we needed to be into Eagle by December. And we're also into site plan review with Washtenaw County for stormwater requirements. So in January and February next year, what we'd like to do is bid out the construction of phase 1, which is the splash pad, the playground, the pavilion, the restrooms. It's all part of that kind of zoomed in area I showed you. And also we'd like to purchase the splash pad equipment and the playground equipment, which there's a resolution today for you to recommend approval on that. And what we'd like to do is that takes about 4 to 5 months to once we order it to get that in. So that's when we would like to purchase that equipment. And at the same time that we're bidding out the construction phase, because our RFPs can take a while to get through. So we wanted to make sure we had that equipment when the time for construction came. So probably around March, we'll be bidding phase 2, which are the paths and the parking lots. And those, due to kind of just the way we need to do construction, need to come after the fact. And so we would like to kind of get that one zone done. And then as that equipment comes out, then we're repaving the parking lots and those paths, so we're not interrupting the work that we've already done. And then June to August will be our Bicentennial Park construction of phase 1. So it should take about 3 months to actually do all of this work once we have the equipment in hand. And then like September, end of August, we're really shooting for that grand opening of the splash pad and phase 1. Phase 2, it will likely be done after our grand opening. So October, November, but it's dependent on the weather and the temperature. So this is something that could be done in spring of 2025. And we already have the sidewalks and the parking lots in there, so it is able to get to. This would just be kind of the final touches on that phase. So we talked about this a little earlier before this presentation as well, but grants, donations, funding. So the funding of this park is being done through grants and donations. It's not coming out of our millage, our parks millage. We've already received $1 million from the state of Michigan to fund the splash pad construction. And we're working with various groups on funding other elements. We've talked to groups about maybe they want to donate for the playground, and so they'll be taking care of that. We've had a group that's interested in actually helping construct the restroom. So we're kind of working through the coordination of that, which has been interesting. There's going to be, like we're talking about, bicentennial tree, just some different elements that people could donate that are going to go into this project. Being that it's a really important project for the community, we're going to see a lot of use out of it. And then I have the wrong date here. The fundraising gala being held at the Michigan Theater. It's on January 19th. We'll be having a table there. It's kind of a big event to hopefully drum up interest as donating and funding part of this exciting project. So the resolution that we have in front of you is to recommend approval to purchase the splash pad and playground equipment for Bicentennial Park from Ventura LLC and appropriate the funds. So Ventura is the local vendor for aquatics. That's the splash pad brand that we've selected to go with. And we're able to purchase directly from them through, it's a purchasing cooperative called Sourcewell. And Sourcewell's been used by like the fire department. They just bought their fire trucks through there, but it's a pre-approved, program that kind of uses the best source methodology that we do at the city. So this is something that has already been approved. We've talked with purchasing about it. So I'm going to jump a second. So the purchasing cooperative is something that I think we'd like to use more, but we can do the playground equipment. We can do the splash pad equipment. We can even do that forever lawn. So what we do is we order all of that and it gets sent directly to us, and then we work with the contractor to install it. So it does save us time and money, which is why we'd like to go through this. So through the Sourcewell, since it's not bid, there's an automatic 8% savings that's been negotiated as part of this program that we work with. So that, especially since this is being funded through donations and grants, this helps us with that. And also, since we can just buy it directly, we don't have to go through an RFP process, which would significantly draw the amount of time that it would take to get the equipment, knowing that there's already that 4-month waiting period, or that's how long it's taking, since a lot of these are built for us. And so this allows us just to order it now and have it in time for construction. So that was my quick overview of Bicentennial. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.
Ruth, you've been waiting and wonderfully patient. Go ahead.
No, it's fine to hear the whole thing. Adam, if you can go to the slide with the splash pad. I guess I'm wondering, like, when my kids were little and I would take them to the splash pad,
Can you see my screen? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Cool. Okay.
I was actually thinking of the next one, I think, but it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to figure out, where are you going to have benches?
So, so I'm going to jump back up to this one for a second. So looking at the splash pad, so that bean shape, it kind of goes like this. So what we would like to do, so this is part of our fence that would kind of bound it, and then the pavilion would be kind of over here, is we would put benches along the fence, and then we would provide tables and some picnic tables and some other benches kind of in here. We haven't selected the site furnishings yet, but I've been interested in actually movable site furnishings, especially for the lawn area, so that families could kind of pull them together as they need.
And
But
and that's inside the fence?
it would be inside the fence, and then outside the fence, we're gonna have benches all the way around the paths, all the way around the playground, over by the swings. And then we're still kind of in the site design phase, but providing trees and shade over here because it's flat and allowing families to kind of lay out. So every
Okay.
splash pad that I visited, there was not enough seating.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been trying to figure out, how to fit in enough.
Yeah, okay, because that's what I was gonna say is that, kids run in and out of it and parents may want to sit there or they may have an infant or something. And it would be really good if you could add some demonstration of where that seating might be. And I'd also add, I'd love to see some, you've got on the splash pad, you have some sunshades, but it would be great if there were sunshades over some of the seating.
Oh, yeah, that's something we can look at doing. I do know there is quite a bit of shade out here. Due to
Right, but not sitting around the splash pad. If I was a parent sitting around the splash pad while my kid is happily in the water, I might want some shade. I would want shade.
Yeah. Well, that's something we can definitely look at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rachel, go ahead.
Okay, I have quite a few. I'm gonna see if I can remember them all. First, I would also want shade around the splash pad, especially given that it's a good way for people without air conditioning in their homes to cool down. It would be thoughtful to allow adults an opportunity to cool down as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna forget them. But first, is it the forever lawn under the swings as well?
Yes. Yep. So everywhere would be no engineered wood fiber or wood chips in this zone. We're taking all
That's
of
what I thought. Okay, second question is, can you remind me of what the perimeter of the fence is? I just missed that part.
It would be the white dash line that's around here. We're also as part of this thinking of putting a fence or like a wood panel fence of some kind to keep, because this is a detention basin. And so maybe putting something out here, even if it's just a visual fence to let people know what's coming that way. We don't have any fencing out here right now, but we're for sure putting it around the splash pad with entrances up at the top, so the northeast and the southeast corner. So that would be where we're going to have a gated access.
Okay. Next question is, you mentioned that you're going to repave the entrance off of Platt, if that's right, and that had been closed because of people cutting through. So assuming that's repaved, what is the plan for avoiding those cut throughs again?
Yeah, I think that's something that we do need to think about, and we haven't gotten into the design of phase 2 yet.
Okay.
But one thing that was clear was one entrance exit was not going to be enough for the side splash pad that we've been looking at. So it was definitely something that we do need to in and out, but that's a good suggestion, thinking about that, how we work through that.
Part of what I was thinking through, and I know you have time for this, is just what kind of message it sends to the community, different sorts of options for that. Like, for example, I'm not sure it's the most welcoming tone to have that repaved and then have maybe cop cars out there to reinforce that you're not allowed to cut through, because it doesn't create a welcoming environment for a recently updated park. So I just think that there is maybe a future push-pull between the plan to avoid cut-throughs and the plan to make sure that this is a welcome and inclusive space for all.
Yeah.
Okay. Fourth one, final one. it's the tough one. So it looks like the resolution is 700 and some change out of the million that is cash in hand to fund the splash pad. I know you're liaising with different groups who will be fundraising, but I'm curious, of course I am, what the total potential price tag is for the project lump sum.
So absolutely everything that we've been looking at, including phase 2 and building in like staff, the extra staff that's going to be needed out here, and then long-term maintenance. I think we were at 3.2 million last that I looked. The phase 1 in total, I think, was around 1.3, 1.4 million. And then yeah, I think we had roughly 1 million in the pathways and the parking lots and things like that. So it's the encompassing, we're around 3 million.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is a good time for me to jump in and add something here. The work that Adam has done on this has been unbelievable. He has taken a lot of time. I mean, yes, he got to take his kids to splash parks during the summer, but that's one benefit of the job. From the park standpoint, we are moving forward with this project as if it is a completely funded by the parks project. We were asked to put together a plan for a splash pad as part of the bicentennial, and that's what we're doing. In order for us to do anything moving into 2024, we have to take this step with this resolution. Buying the supplies today, or not today, we're not going to get that, but buying it now gives us the ability to make the decision at any point following this to put a hold on it, but we have the equipment in place. It has been talked about this is a privately funded initiative. If we are struggling to get it, we have stop points that come along in the next couple of months. So that's where we're at with this. Adam's job has totally been to plan this for completion, and that's what he's doing. My job and the job of the fundraisers and the job of the administrators is help us get the funding associated with that to complete that process. So I just want everyone to know that just because we're doing this doesn't mean it's going to open in September, doesn't mean that it's going to be there. But in order for us to get there, we have to take this step.
Josh. Hannah, go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Adam. This is really cool. I'm really excited for this. So I only have 2 questions. First one is, I noticed there's a lot of green space on either side of the splash pad. Are you guys planning to stripe either of those for fields, or is that like a future development? And what's the plan with those?
So south of the splash pad, one of those zones, I think historically was used as a soccer field, but actually think it's too small to be used as an actual soccer field. So that's a zone that I think we're open to taking a look at and seeing what we can do with that. To the north, that's a lot to do with our stormwater, so we can't do much with the green space to the north. The south is where we do have that opportunity to do something.
And we've had rentals. I think Washtenaw County football, junior football has done stuff on the north side there. As Adam mentioned, there were previously soccer fields down on the south side. It's just kind of more of a rental space associated with it. One of the concerns that we are looking at one of the exciting things is I think the park will be better utilized moving forward. There'll be greater demand, greater use. And so adding capacity with whether it's sports fields along with the baseball fields and different things create just a number of people that are there. So it's going to be balancing out how do we find the right mix of people during the right time to best utilize this park.
I also want to follow up and say we haven't done yet community engagement on this park. And so what we want to come is inform the community on the splash pad. There's not much we can change with that, but opening up to look at the park kind of as a whole and what else do residents want to see here. There's been a lot of ideas thrown at us from bicentennial groups, from different people that want to fund something out here. But we're looking at early next year coming out to the community and opening this up as a community park and what do we want to see out here. And so I think, Hannah, a lot of what comes out of that will also do people want to see happen? And we have spaces for it. It's kind of a very underutilized large park. And so we have an opportunity to do something, but we have to figure out what that is.
Awesome. And then my second question was just, I'm less familiar with splash pads and kind of how they operate. Obviously, you guys will have to winterize once the weather changes. But what is kind of the plan for operating hours? And I mean, do you walk in and you hit a big red button that says start the water? Or kind of how does that all work?
Yeah, so what we're using as part of the recirculating system, there's there's like a pump room, and it looks like a storage, like a shipping container. It will have like a graphic on it of some kind that we're still working through. But that will take care of all of the filtration, the pumps, the timing, the controllers will have access to that kind of thing. So we can say when it can operate or when it's shut down. I think last we were talking is maybe like 8 or 9 p.m. shutting down, but we're still trying to work through those regulations. But yes, there's a button that will be pushed. So I think everything kind of is run and activated on a 15 to 20 minute interval. And there's just a button that kids can come up and run and hit whenever it's within that opening spot. And that's what activated. Most splash pads that I went to throughout this summer, there wasn't a need to really hit that button because kids were hitting it every 30 seconds. But that's kind of how it operates. So it's button pushed, but it's also controlled by us.
Cool. Thank you.
Alexa, go ahead.
Thanks, Adam, for all the work that's gone into it. It's super exciting. And after Josh kind of gave the explanation about more of the engagement, maybe this is worth waiting, but did just want to share. I hosted a toddler birthday party at Southeastern Park and was offered that you could kind of drive up the walking path to drop off at the pavilion because it's a ways to walk if you're carrying stuff or if you have a walker. This could wait till phase 2, but just knowing that there may be a culture of people who are used to being able to drive up to the pavilion. As you're thinking about the phase 1 surfacing, it just might be something to keep in mind as you guys are exploring alternatives. I don't know what the right answer is, but do know that people might be accommodated to driving the walk.
Well, so we
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a really good comment. One of the things that it's not shown here that we're thinking of for kind of a future is a second pavilion that would be rentable. So right now, this pavilion, you can rent it. One thing that came across from every system that we looked at is you really can't rent pavilions on splash pads. There'll be a lot of issues. There's a lot of people that take space. There's a lot of clamoring going on for tables. So they've had to remove the ability to rent. So what we would like to do, because this is one of our most rented parks for pavilions, is provide a second option that's not right adjacent to the splash pad that could still be used. So that's kind of one thing we're thinking about. As far as the driving, we will need to get vehicles back here. And so right now, a lot of people drive up this path, which is probably where you came from. What we're going to do, since this parking lot is going to be more active, we want to put in a path between the ball fields. And we're looking at using maybe a deeper profile or looking at that hardscape of what that is, being that vehicular traffic will come down this way as opposed to this way. Also for a safety concern. I think there's going to be so many kids running around here that I don't want to have a chance of a vehicle ever coming near that. So we're kind of going to create the path this way and start utilizing that more often for our utility path.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I was surprised that they were like, just drive on up.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Driving up the pedestrian ramp here, but
Yep. Well, agreed.
Any other questions for Adam on this one or a motion to approve the equipment purchase?
Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing that's part of the resolution, the appropriating funds. So that's part of the resolution. While we have received the grant, we don't yet have the monies. So that will come out of the general fund. And then once we do get it, that will replace what we purchased. So that's that portion of the resolution.
Thanks. Yep. So we are expecting it to be repaid once those funds come in.
Yes.
Okay. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, do we have a timeline for that? Do we know, like,
Yeah, I'll jump into that. So it's not actually a grant. It was earmarked by Senator Irwin into this year's budget. The paperwork has been put in. We were informed them that that we will be looking to start buying things in January. So we are working through that process. Finance is very directly involved with this because it's not only this one. There's also another appropriation that was given for the solar farm that is there as well. So we have conveyed that this purchasing will take place in 2024, majority of it early, part of it mid. So we will get there. So that a long answer to say no, not 100% sure when we're going to get it, but we're doing all the things we need to get it taken care of.
Thank you. Further discussion or potential motion? Rachel, motion to approve?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Rachel. Is there a second? I saw Tisha's hand. Tisha, second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Adam, thanks again so much for your tireless work on this project. It looks truly exciting.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one further resolution to consider, and this one Josh is going to tell us about. It is a resolution to recommend supporting the Leslie Science and Nature Center Playscape in the amount of $250,000. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to look at this. Obviously, last month we had a presentation from Susan Westhoff that spoke very much about the history between Leslie Science and Nature Center, the nonprofit, and the property that was donated by Dr. and Mrs. Leslie, and the exciting work that they're doing on the playscape that they're building and the amenities that go along with them. At the end of that presentation, I think I prepped this group to let everyone know that, you know, it is staff's desire, along with conversations with the Leslie Science and Nature Center, to support that playscape. This is an amenity that would be coming into a parks property that would be the parks' long-term responsibility. And we have a partner that is adding a large percentage of the cost of the amenities with that. In doing my research, as I said that I would do after that, I was able to find a collection of developer contributions that have been sitting in our fund since before 2014, that are not connected to any projects, that were not engaged with things, that in some ways were just sitting there. And so this is money that we've had that we could have been utilizing before my time here. But I was really excited to come up with this type of amount because I think that it gives us the opportunity to signify a commitment to not just the Leslie Science and Nature Center and the partnership that we have with the city with them, but also understanding that these amenities are going to add to a park, to a program in the northeast side of town that really can become more of a destination for families, for groups, and provide us with something that we don't necessarily have at this point. So, you know, I think staff are excited about doing this. I think that there's a way for us to continue to engage and working with Leslie and Science and Nature Center and the Hands-On Museum as they continue to do their grant and fundraising. This will help them support getting to that 1.6 million, I think, is what their total amount for this project is. So that is kind of, I don't have a presentation because I don't do presentations that often, but I just wanted to put that out there and go from there.
Yeah, it's truly exciting. I think that you found this cadre of funds, and I guess it raised the question for me, you know, how often will we be able to have access to that kind of a cadre of funds in the future? I realize that, you know, many of these funds are quite old, and I guess there's some concern about having had the funds available for so long and not really, you know, knowing about them or knowing what to do with them, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want to say that we didn't know that what to do with them or where they were at. I think that they're part of the developer contributions. Some have designations, you know, so every development that goes up, there is a caveat in there that talks about either parkland or a voluntary park donation in lieu of land. So of the 250, currently there's about $804,000 of developer contributions that weren't tied to a project or items at this point. There's still some additional funds that are dedicated to the farmers market or to other projects or park specific. So there's additional funds that we might be able to utilize in some other programs. Lockett Park, the improvements that are going on there are going to be based on some contributions for a developer contribution in that area. So, you know, when things make sense and Hillary and Adam and staff are doing a good job of getting that all collected as well. You know, as we have more developments come to downtown, there's fewer spaces where parks in downtown that can be utilized. So there's funds that we're looking to utilize towards community parks. So my willingness to put the 250 is because there was another $550,000 that is unclaimed at this point based on what we used to have, what is pre-2014, as well as what has recently come in.
Got it. Rachel, go ahead.
I want to start by saying I'm very excited about this project. I've been very excited during this whole meeting, in case you can't tell. But I am wrestling with something that I wanted to elevate to this commission, which is how do we make decisions on what would be funded out of these kind of surprise funds between requests like this to Leslie Science and Nature Center versus already existing requests. And what comes to mind, although of course there are no matching kind of funds behind it, is the request that we saw from Dolph and their idea of, I can't remember if it was a playground or a pavilion, but that's just a little bit of what I've been wrestling with, is how do we decide what to prioritize and when? And there is some former PAC involvement with this Leslie Science and Nature Center project that I think requires, I guess for me at least, this wrestling. So I'm not sure if there's further logic that could be expanded upon here, but just wanted to elevate my thinking on that.
No, I appreciate that, and I do understand, and I think that, you know, with the park system with 160 plus parks, with 80 playgrounds, with a variety of different things, there's always this wrestling that goes along with it. Leslie Science and Nature Center and the city have been in conversations about this playscape since 2015. You know, when they started their idea, there's been discussions associated with it. And I think throughout that time, there have been conversations about what is going on up there. How does the city support it? How do we find ways to do it? And so I think that there has been more discussions about that, and it's been on the table longer. You know, I think that, you know, as we talk about the Barton to Bandamere Tunnel, the reason that is being done is through the partnerships with Washtenaw County and HWPI to help us expand our resources to ensure that amenities get built. You know, I think that the Leslie Science and Nature Center playground, the resources that they do, I mean, this is an organization that is running an operation in our parks and has that the city turned over to them because we could no longer manage that facility and that resources in the way that we do. And so for the past, I think it's been since 2009, you know, for the past 15 years, Leslie Science and Nature Center has run the operations there without operational support from the city. Now we have maintained different parts of the property and the facilities, but compared to something in line with Community Action Network, where we have outsourced that to them and pay them a fee each year, Leslie Science and Nature Center has done the work that they've done without financial support operationally from the city. So I think this is an opportunity for us to further support that partnership as they move to something that will help their operation, but also be open to the public and provide an amenity that the northeast side of town doesn't have. With the playscape, with the bathroom amenities, with the teaching spaces that they're looking at doing. So, and I wrestle with it as well. So I completely understand that. I wouldn't come to this group without confidence that I believe that this is a good step and it's a good relationship to move forward with.
Ruth, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking in particular to Leslie Science Center, I think, Rachel, I feel like good ideas are coming up to us all the time, and it seems to me like we've mostly been able to fund them, but I think there's a difference between ideas that are like really fully developed. If I recall, the Dolph piece, came with also buying additional land. And Leslie has this partnership and has been working with the Parks Department for a really long time.
Well, I just to add to that, Ruth, I think they also have their funding. I mean, and Rachel, you alluded to this as well. I think they're putting their own dollars behind this project as well. That I think, and I'm not. Would you say again, Josh, how much that is at this? Do you know?
I think, and I'll look back on it, but I'm pretty sure that their total project cost was I think 1.4. They have raised 600,000 at this point, and they're continuing to do look for grants, do fundraising to remain that other 800,000. And where we support that 250 gets them closer to that goal.
They're pretty close.
Mhm.
They're pretty close. Tisha, you see your hand as well.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. I think it was 1.497, almost 498, and they had like 602, almost 603. My question was, does this 250, does the progression of the project heavily rely on this, or can this just help them continue with the next stages?
I mean, one of the things that we've talked about is that there are a number of parts of this project that are less attractive to funders. When you talk about some of the restrooms, when you talk about some of the infrastructure that's there, they become a little bit less attractive to, not many people, not putting their name on something, doing that type of stuff. So I think that this allows us to take care of some of the infrastructure costs, as well as some of those projects that may be a little bit less exciting for other funders to support. This has been a discussion that has been going on between between Susan and I and other individuals for over a year now. I think that they have some staffing or some board conversations that are going on as well. That this money can help support additional funds coming in if it's supported from the city side.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments about this particular resolution or motion? Anne, go ahead.
I'd like to move that we
Approve the resolution.
accept the motion. Yeah.
Ruth, is that a second?
Yeah, but I think Vincent hasn't seconded yet. Were you gonna second, Vince?
Yes, but that's okay, Ruth. Thanks.
Oh, we'll let Vincent have it. I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, why not?
Sure. Thank you.
All right, motion by Anne, second by Vincent. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. With that, we are on to commission proposed business. This being the last meeting of 2023, we need to approve our calendar for 2024. And as you'll see, if you have a chance to look at the calendar, most of the dates are the third Tuesday. Some of them are the fourth Tuesday. So it's a little bit different than our current calendar. Anne, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the October date. I noticed that was the fourth the fourth Tuesday instead of the third Tuesday, and just curious if there was any particular reason on that one.
Let me
yeah.
check.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry I didn't notice it earlier. I would have emailed you about it, but just noticed it this afternoon.
um,
I wonder if it has to do with Indigenous Peoples' Day that month, maybe if the city if the city council meeting is pushed by a week.
No, but it should be the second. So city council, the third Wednesday follows the second Tuesday, so city council shouldn't meet on that date. I think that I did this prior to getting the council. I will.
If there's a good reason like that, that's fine. Just
No, the good reason is I probably looked at, I missed the first. So,
but we can approve our calendar, and then if we need to amend it, we can always see it again and reapprove.
Yeah,
Was there an amended version that went out to the calendar?
well, so the title was wrong, and I am looking through that. The first January is the 23rd as well, so or 2003. If you look at so there's a couple mistakes in there. Trying to find this. Give me just a second. We can approve based on. So yes, October should be the 15th. And so that can be corrected.
Awesome. Good catch, Anne. Thank you. Further comments or a motion to approve the calendar? I saw Rachel. All right, Rachel, a motion to approve. Is there a second? Therese, go ahead. Motion by Rachel, second by Therese. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much. With that, I think we are ready for our second public commentary portion of our meeting. Are there any callers on the line?
We have no callers for second public commentary.
All right, thank you very much. That being the case, all of the communications are in your packet. And at this point, we stand adjourned for the remainder of 2023. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for being here at PAC.